Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Today we're looking at Get Active with MS and with a particular focus around exercising during COVID-19. Our presenter today is Caitlin Ireland and I'm your facilitator and I'm Andrea Salmon. We start all our programs by acknowledging and paying respect to the traditional custodians, past, present and emerging, on whose lands we meet today. And we acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country. And we respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. It is our pleasure to have Caitlin online today. Caitlin's been working at MS for about 3 years, and she's one of the exercise physiologists based normally at the gym at Lidcombe in Sydney. In her role there, she designs and delivers exercise programs for people living with multiple sclerosis. Caitlin really enjoys working with her clients and appreciates the value that a well-prepared exercise program provides for them. And Caitlin will explain to you how their services have changed during this present COVID-19 experience, and I think you'll be pretty impressed at how responsive they've been. So I'm going to pass over control of the slides to Caitlin, so bear with me while I click a couple of buttons.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. Like Andrea said, it's so great to have so many people with me here today, and I'm going to be talking about getting active with MS. So I did include a photo because I wasn't sure if the video would work, but you can see me. So, but this is my usual setting. You can see at the Lidcombe gym, but yeah, obviously I'm in a bit of a different setting at the moment. So I did receive, when everyone registered, they answered a question about what they wanted to get from today's presentation. And I've really tried to address as many of those questions or concerns that people had in today's presentation. So I'm going to talk about the benefits of exercise for people living with MS, the exercise guidelines and types of exercise, as well as barriers to exercising and how to overcome them. So I know a few people mentioned things like pain and fatigue, and they had questions about how they can exercise with those symptoms. So I'm going to try my best to cover those. And then I'm going to talk about motivation as well. That was another very common question that people had or wanted more information about. So I'll definitely address that, as well as exercising during our current climate, which is COVID-19. And I'll provide a few more resources for you to do a little bit more research if you wanted to after this. So I wanted to start by clarifying a few definitions that get interchanged a little bit. So physical activity, that's defined as a bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that requires energy expenditure. So that is any movement at all. And that's really the umbrella term. And then we have things like exercise and incidental activity that comes under that. So exercise is planned, structured and repetitive physical activity for the purpose of developing physical fitness. So the two main words there I want you to think about is that planned and for a purpose. So that's things like a strength training, doing weights or cycling on a bike, those kind of things. And then we have incidental activity, which is unstructured activity taken during the day, such as walking for transport, doing housework, and activities of daily living. And now that incidental activity is still really important in maintaining an active lifestyle. What I'm going to be focusing on today is that exercise, the planned, structured physical activity for a purpose. So now let's talk about some of the benefits of exercise for people with MS. Now, you may have heard, but historically there were suggestions that people with MS should avoid exercise. There were suspicions that it might make MS worse or cause a relapse. However, since then, there is a huge amount of research that looks at, has determined that exercise is safe for people with MS. And so this is one particular big study that was done in 2014. It was a review that looked at 26 studies almost 1,300 people with MS exercising, and they found that there were no increases in relapse, no adverse events, and in fact, the exercise was beneficial in managing symptoms and maintaining overall well-being for people with MS. Although, even though we have these kind of studies available, it is still believed that around 80% of people with MS will still undertake no physical activity at all. So with that, I'm going to open up our first poll where I'm going to ask you, which of these MS symptoms do you have? And if you don't have MS yourself, which symptoms have you seen in someone with MS? So you can pick as many as you like. We'll go A, fatigue, B, muscle weakness and spasticity, C, loss of mobility, balance and falls, D, pain and or changes in sensation, or E, cognition and mood changes.
Here we go. So this question is asking which of these MS symptoms do you have? And in this poll, you can actually tick as many of those that apply to you. So hover your mouse and choose which symptoms you experience. Do you experience fatigue? Do you experience muscle weakness and spasticity? Do you experience mobility or balance or falls issues? Maybe pain or changes in sensation? Or perhaps it's cognition and mood changes, or perhaps it's a combination of those. We know that everybody is different and that these are all symptoms that you might be experiencing now or might experience at some time. But so in this poll, we're asking which of these MS symptoms do you have? And I can see that about 70% of people have voted. So I can wait a couple more seconds for that to other people who'd like to vote, and then I'll share the responses. That looks like we've kind of petered out, so I'll close that off and I'll share the responses with everybody. So, Caitlin, I don't know if you can see these responses, but 92% of the people online today, and we've got 100 people on, woohoo! 92% of people experience fatigue. 77% of people that are online today experiencing loss of mobility, balance or falls. 74% of people are experiencing muscle weakness and spasticity. Then 59% of people are experiencing pain or changes in sensation, and the same figure, not necessarily the same people, but 59% experiencing cognition and mood changes. So you're not alone. Lots of people are experiencing the same symptoms that you are.
Yeah. And what Andrea said is true. Every person on here may have it or will definitely have a different presentation of each of these symptoms as well. So thank you, Andrea. Yep. So yeah, very interesting. I think consistent with research with fatigue being the main symptom of MS, and we'll definitely talk about that later. But I just wanted to say that at the moment, unfortunately, there isn't one drug or medication that can help with all of these symptoms. However, the good news is that exercise, if you're exercising regularly, can have a beneficial impact on all of these symptoms. So when we talk about the benefits of exercise, we have the physical benefits. For people with MS that exercise regularly, they can still receive the same benefits as the general population in terms of reducing secondary deconditioning due to inactivity. And that's things like reducing the risk of developing cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, some cancers, as well as helping manage weight. But there are specific benefits for people with MS, and that's things like improving muscle strength in weakened muscles and improving cardiovascular fitness, reducing fatigue, improving flexibility, which can in turn improve or reduce pain levels due to spasticity or tight muscles, correct posture and gait abnormalities, which can then work to improve your ability to mobilize around the community, improve balance, which can reduce falls risk, improve sexual functioning, maintain and improve bone density, and improve bladder and bowel function. There are also psychological benefits, of exercise, so improving mood and sense of well-being. And there are social benefits of exercise as well, especially when you're participating in a group, in particular a group that might specialize in MS, where you can have that shared experience as well. Obviously, at the moment, you might not be able to get as much social benefit from your exercise, but we are talking about as well just the general benefits. And finally, quality of life. So exercise can help you live independently at home or with family. It can help you enjoy being in the community with family and friends. It can help you work or maintain work. It can help you complete tasks with less assistance. Can help you complete more tasks before feeling fatigued. So now we know those benefits, what do we have to do? How much exercise do we need to do to gain those benefits? So I'm going to open up the second poll, which is how much exercise you're currently doing each week. Now I want this to be normally. I know that a lot of people's situations have changed a lot due to the coronavirus, but I want you to think about how much exercise you would normally do each week, and I want you to be honest with me. So A being no exercise, B being less than 1 hour, C 1 to 2 hours, D 3 to 5 hours, and E more than 5 hours.
And rather than putting your answers in the comment or question area, see if you can use your mouse to hover over the answers. And in this one, there's only one answer that you're allowed to put in. Try and work out for you what your current level of exercise is. And when we haven't asked this, Caitlin, but I'm wondering if people's exercise has gone up or down during COVID-19. For me, it's gone up because I'm much more deliberate about, sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was going to say, and we will be asking that towards the end as well to see. It'll be interesting to see what the impact it's had to people's exercise at the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. So a couple more people want to vote on that one. And I did get a message that someone can't vote, and that's possibly true. If you're using your phone, you might not be able to vote on these. I'm not quite sure how it looks, but I'll close that off and share the results. So 39% of the people online today are exercising 1 to 2 hours. 36% of the group are exercising 3 to 5 hours. Then we've got 13% who are exercising less than an hour, 8% who are exercising more than 5 hours. Wow. And 4% are acknowledging that they're not doing any exercise.
And good. And look, we want to be truthful, and that is absolutely fine. And that's why we're here, to find out more about exercise as well. But that's really good. I was, I'm impressed to see that, majority of people on here are exercising, which is fantastic. And a lot of people are getting more than that 1 hour, which is great. So what we'll talk about now is how much exercise you should be doing, or what the evidence says for recommendations. So first, we're just going to look at the general recommendations for physical activity for adults in Australia. And they tell us that we should be accumulating 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. Or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise. And that's each week, okay? And then in terms of sedentary behaviour guidelines, trying to minimise the amount of prolonged sitting where possible, okay? But we'll now look at some more MS-specific guidelines. And this was a review of literature done in 2013 by a team of Canadian researchers who determined what the minimal dose of exercise was. So they created some evidence-based guidelines, and it's important to know the target population, which was people with MS aged 18 to 64 with mild to moderate disability. So that's individuals who are unable to walk more than 5 metres, even with an aid, to mostly wheelchair users, both relapsing, remitting and progressive MS. And so what they came up with is that people with MS should be exercising at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity twice a week, and strength training exercises for major muscle groups 2 times per week. So that's 2 aerobic sessions and 2 strength training sessions. Okay, and we'll break that down a little bit further, but just from the guidelines that they provided as well, there's a couple of other recommendations. So they did say that aerobic and strength training activities can be done on the same day. So that might look like a gym class at a community centre, or you might do some strength and some aerobic in the same session. Resting your muscles for at least 1 day between strength training sessions. Trying to do 10 to 15 repetitions of each exercise. So if you were doing a sit to stand, you would do 10, at least 10 in a row before you have a rest, and then working up to doing 2 sets. So after the rest, doing another lot of 10. Activity should be performed at a moderate intensity. So you can talk but not sing. And I'll talk about that intensity up soon. Pick a resistance so that you can barely do the last set for strengthening exercises, and rest for 1 to 2 minutes between each set of exercise. So I've just put together an example exercise plan from those guidelines of what this might look like in your week. So you might have 2 30-minute aerobic sessions, which you can see there. They're both 30 minutes long. One might be, a walk with a friend where you're trying to still, get puffing. And the second session might be, for example, you might have access to a bike at home. So you might be just jump on 30 minutes exercising on the bike. And then we've got 2 strength training sessions there as well. So the Tuesday afternoon one might be a class or a gym session. And it could be an MS specific gym class you do where you have strength training and some aerobic training as well. And then on Saturday, you might have a home program where you use a TheraBand to complete your exercises at home. So you might have heard me talk about that intensity, that moderate or vigorous intensity that we measure our exercise by. So there's a couple of ways that you can measure intensity. The first is by looking at your target heart rate. So you might have a device which takes your heart rate. I know that there's a lot out there at the moment. So if you are using your heart rate, first have look at your heart rate before you start exercising, and then 5 to 10 minutes after you've started, and then continue looking at it in regular intervals. And what you want to be aiming for that moderate intensity is around 50 to 70% of your heart rate max, okay? Now, all you need to know is that to estimate your heart rate max, the easiest way is to go 220 minus your age. Now, to make maths really much easier for me, we're going to go, say I'm 20 years old. That would mean that my heart rate max would be 220 minus 20, my age. So my heart rate max would be 220 beats per minute. So if I'm aiming to get for a moderate intensity, I'd be wanting to hit at least 100 beats per minute while I'm in the middle of my exercise. Okay, now the most important thing to be aware of is that measuring heart rate is not always the most effective way of measuring intensity for the MS population. And some people with MS will find that they have a blunted heart rate, which means that their heart rate doesn't increase with increasing workload or increasing intensity. So if that's what you find, that's okay. And I would always generally recommend anyway using our second method, which is the talk test. You don't need any equipment, and it's a really easy thing that you can do at any point when you're exercising, is to think about how puffed you are. So if you can talk and sing without puffing at all, then you're exercising at a low level. If you can comfortably talk but not sing, you're probably exercising at about a moderate intensity, okay, which is kind of what we're aiming for the most part. And if you can't say more than a few words without gasping for breath, then this is about vigorous intensity. So I want you to think about that next time you're exercising and see if you can get that puff as you exercise. And I just wanted to note as well that in terms of the guidelines that were released, they did say that Tai Chi, yoga, and Pilates and stretching are really great activities to do for people with MS, in addition to the physical activities you do to meet the guidelines. So they can be effective in building flexibility, balance, and body awareness. So now we're going to talk about the types of exercise you can do to meet those guidelines.
Caitlin,
So remember oh yes, go
can
for it.
I ask a couple of questions about heart rate and
Yes,
level of
definitely.
intensive exercise? So someone has asked about how does housework fit into that? While we're doing things at home, how does that count for our exercise?
Yeah, so, and you can actually see on this slide here, that is categorized as being generally active. So when we're talking about this exercise, remember it's structured, purposeful exercise on top of your general active lifestyle activities. So housework, although it can be really beneficial in keeping yourself active, it's actually considered as an incidental activity. Form of physical activity. So we want to be setting aside a separate time to do specific exercises targeted towards your goals. So if your goal is improving strength, then specific strengthening exercise. If your goal is improving fit, then specific fitness exercises, things like, it could be, for example, walking around your house, but not for the purpose of housework, in addition to the housework. So I know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that, and I know that for a lot of people, the housework can already be very, very tiring as well. So yeah, I guess it depends on the type of housework. If you're doing, if you are kind of being more purposeful to do extra walking when you do around the house, then you might be able to add that on. But again, thinking about that, trying to get the puff up to get those benefits.
And
So
if you
hopefully that
can't
answered
do
that. So,
30
oh yeah.
minutes, if you can't do 30 minutes of quality aerobic exercise because of
Mm-hmm.
your fatigue, is it better to stop or keep going for the 30 minutes?
Yeah, so again, we'll have a look at fatigue as well soon, but I guess the general recommendations are to work within your limitations. And if you are someone who experiences severe fatigue, then the recommendations are to break it up into smaller, manageable times. So you might find that doing 30 minutes in one block is not achievable for you with your fatigue. So you can split that up into little smaller sections, so maybe 5 minutes here with a break, a 2-minute break, and then another 5 minutes. And then you might find that later on in the day, you do another 10 minutes and then you break that up like that. So it is with MS, it's a little bit of trial and error, unfortunately, to work out how you can implement that with your current presentation. And then I guess trying to see if you can progress to doing longer bouts at a time and have a goal of working towards that 20 minutes or 30 minutes of exercise. So the idea is that if you exercise can help with fatigue, and if you do continue, you know, pushing a little bit longer and longer in your sessions, you might find that you can tolerate a longer aerobic session than when you first started.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Caitlin.
No worries. Yeah, so in terms of being active, and that's exactly what this, we just had a question about. It's that incidental activity, so gardening, housework, playing with the kids, and it can feel like exercise. And it is definitely physical activity, but it is that general incidental exercise that can help with just maintaining an active lifestyle that we want to still do as much as you can. Within your limitations, obviously. And then we have strength training. So strength training can be body weight exercises, which can be things like sit-ups, sit to stands, push-ups. You could add resistances like a TheraBand that can make exercising, can make it a little bit more difficult or challenging. If you have access to a gym facility, then you may have access to weight machines and free weights. And then there's also group strength classes as well. And then in terms of cardio and aerobic exercise, walking, running, or propelling a wheelchair on the streets, cycling, boxing, swimming, sports, including modified sports, Dancing is a great one. If you have access to a gym, again, cardio gym equipment, and especially if you have access to a specialized gym that may have modified equipment available. And then there's group classes as well. In terms of the practical applications of exercise, no two people listening here today will have the same presentation of symptoms. And therefore, it's really important to have an individual plan. Whether you create that yourself or you have assistance from a professional, we want that to be goal specific. So thinking about your weaknesses and working within your limitations. So only doing what you are able to do and is reasonable for you to do. Thinking about quality, not quantity. So if you are someone who fatigues very quickly, try and do those smaller sessions where you still can have that correct technique, and then having big breaks or splitting up your session rather than doing one big session where towards the end you're really finding that that fatigue is limiting your ability to complete the exercise. To be effective, exercise needs to be performed regularly and at a suitable intensity. And please choose activities that are going to be enjoyable. That's really important. Match your physical needs and can be scheduled into your weekly routine. So if you're someone who hasn't exercised in a long time, just start slow and gradually progress. And then make sure you're exercising in a safe environment. And I'll talk a little bit about how to set up a safe environment at home later in the presentation. So now we're going to talk about barriers for people with MS and how to overcome them. Okay, so we'll talk about temperature sensitivity, fatigue, weakness and reduced mobility, pain, and what to do during an exacerbation. So the first one is heat sensitivity. I've included a fair bit of information in these sections, so you can go back and have a bit more of a read of some ideas. But in terms of people exercising with heat sensitivity, you will find that your body temperature will increase as you exercise. And people with MS will find that even with only a small rise in temperature of their body, they may find an increase in some of their sensory symptoms. So sensory symptoms are things like muscle weakness, fatigue, pins and needles or numbness. So don't be alarmed if you feel that come on during a session. Try and see if you can cool yourself down, but it should then resolve, or the symptoms should subside around 30 minutes after you're stopped exercising. However, if you do find that it persists for more than 2 hours after you stop exercising, it may mean that you need to consider reducing the intensity and duration of your next session. So exercising in a cool environment, fan, aircon, good ventilation. Pre and post exercise cooling is another idea, like a cool shower. Cooling during your exercise, so things like drinking icy water. Taking breaks is a big one that can help to manage your core body temperature. And if it is a really hot day and you're still wanting to exercise, try strengthening programs. They may be better tolerated than aerobic exercise sessions. Fatigue. Okay, so fatigue, as we already saw in the in that poll previously, it is the most commonly reported symptom for people with MS. There's a few different types of fatigue. I'll go over them briefly now, but if you are wanting to get a bit more detailed information, MS does have whole webinars and lots of information specifically aimed at fatigue as well. So I'd highly recommend looking into that if that's something that you find is your really limiting factor for you. But there's primary fatigue, which is fatigue that's a direct result of the MS condition, MS itself. But then we have secondary fatigue, which is a result of other factors that are a result of MS. So that's things like reduced sleep. Some medications can have, can make someone more fatigued. as well as muscular weakness. When your muscles are weak, it takes more energy to complete tasks. So a really good thing is if you experience severe fatigue, it may be an idea just to schedule a session with your GP if you haven't already, just to check that there aren't any secondary factors that can be resolved or treated or managed to help manage your fatigue as well. Neuromuscular fatigue, and that's fatigue in the muscles with constant repeated movement. So that can be things like, I'm sure a lot of you may have heard or experienced foot drop. So that is weakness in or fatigue in the muscles with repeated movement. So when you're walking for a certain distance, you might find that when you first start walking, you really get that nice heel strike and control the foot. And then after you've been walking for 5 minutes, you might start to experience that slapping of the foot on the ground. But the good thing with neuromuscular fatigue is that with only a short break, those muscles can regain the energy again. So you might find that if you then have a bit of a break from walking, even just a couple of minutes, and then go again, you will be able to, or hopefully be able to control the muscle a little bit better in some cases. So the good thing is that exercise can significantly reduce fatigue levels. Now, tips to manage fatigue. Scheduling in less fatigue times. So that might be different for every person, but generally exercising in the morning is recommended. Avoid exercising on days with lots of social activities, or making sure that you have a rest between like a social activity and then your exercise program. Beginning exercise sessions of a short duration, so less than 20 minutes, low intensity, working at your own pace, and again, having regular rest is so important for people with MS. Trying to mix vigorous exercises with lighter exercises, as well as alternating muscle groups. So maybe doing an exercise with your arms and then doing an exercise with your legs, and then another one with your arms. And that's just giving each muscle group, so your legs or your arms, that break in between. And rest after exercise. If you find that fatigue persists for more than 2 hours, again, it may be that you may need to reduce the duration or intensity of your session for next time. And don't exercise if you're feeling unwell. Yeah, if you wake up and you're feeling really terrible, really fatigued, then it might be that you reschedule your session for another day or another time. All right, so weakness in legs and reduced mobility. If you're someone who experiences in particular weakness in your lower limbs, in your legs, then you can still try and do an upper body exercise program if you're able to. So weights as well as cardio equipment. There are wheelchair-based exercises, machines and sports. Another good recommendation is trialing water-based exercises. So the buoyancy of the water can make some of those movements easier, can be really beneficial. But ultimately, if you have a specific weakness or mobility issue, and you're finding that getting in the way of exercise, I'd really recommend speaking to someone. So a therapist, or maybe going to an MS specific exercise group that can help you target the areas of weakness and reach your goals in that way. And now pain. So if you're someone that experiences a lot of pain, particularly during or after your exercise session, I'd really recommend speaking to a health professional, a GP, a physio, an exercise physiologist, and asking if it's safe for you to start or continue exercising, or maybe reviewing your current program. But also to try, you could try activities and types of equipment to see what works for you and what works based on where you're feeling pain. Yeah, trying to mix it up a little bit and see what works for you. But yeah, ultimately, potentially consulting with a health professional to help you create a program that's going to be suitable for you as well. And now what to do during an exacerbation. So if you do find that you have a relapse or a worsening in some of your symptoms, it may be that you need to take a break from exercising, and that's okay. We're all going to need to do that at some point, and that's completely fine. If you do want to continue exercising, try and do it at a reduced intensity or duration, and try more gentle forms of exercise. And then when you are ready to return, restart at a reduced intensity and gradually build up. You may need to review the appropriateness of your current program, especially if you've had, as a result of the exacerbation, maybe a change in your symptoms or a change in the severity of your symptoms. And if you have a therapist that you consult with, you may just want to check back with them to check if your current program is still suitable for you. Now, motivation. I had a lot of people asking about, that they wanted to tune in today to kind of motivate themselves to exercise. Hopefully some of the benefits that we spoke about already kind of act as a motivator, but we'll talk about some other strategies that we can use. So the first thing to really think about is that doing something is better than doing nothing. So even if you only have 10 minutes and you're thinking, oh, what's the point? I've only got 10 minutes. That 10 minutes is better than not doing anything at all. So still try. Ensure it's enjoyable. And if you're finding that it's not a particularly enjoyable exercise, are you able to combine it with something that is enjoyable? Whether it's good music or fresh air, socializing, are you able to, grab a friend or a family member to join you? Joining a group to exercise with, scheduling it into your week in advance. This is a great one. So scheduling it into your calendar like an appointment. And then you know that if, someone asks you, Karen calls and she wants to go for coffee, well, no, can we do another time? I have to do my exercises then. So, really have a real schedule to your week. You might want to set up a nudge or a reminder. That could be an alarm. It could be that every morning when you get up and you get up and turn the kettle on, that you have a couple of exercises that you do while you're waiting for the kettle to boil to make your tea. Set specific and realistic goals and reward yourself when you get to those. And keep a record of what you've done and your improvements. So that might be in your calendar, kind of writing down, oh, I did 5 minutes of this today, I did 30 minutes of this, so that you can monitor it as well. And it acts as a bit of a checklist. So you feel, that sense of accomplishment once you've completed it. Following a structured program or supervised group. And again, variety is great if you're able to. All right, and how about during COVID-19? So there are a lot of restrictions that have been put in place that can make it really hard for people to exercise at the moment. So I'm just going to ask you to answer our last poll, which is whether or how the coronavirus has affected your ability to exercise. A is not at all. I'm doing the same as usual. B, I'm still able to exercise, but not as much as usual. C, I'm doing a lot less exercise than normal. Or D, I've stopped all regular exercise.
And so this is another one where you can hover over the poll there and tick your answer. Some people have told me that they can't do the polls. I think you have to manage to get your mouse right on the little circle. So give it a go and see if you can answer in this one. It's great that you pop your answers in the question area, but I just can't contribute those to the graphs that we show. Not that that really matters. It's, it's not a problem, but yeah, if you can give us an indication, that's really great. Caitlin, someone was saying that they usually do a great deal of exercise, but it's just so hard while they can't go out to the gym, and it's the exercise that actually sets them up for the day. So it's having a lot of impact for some people, but you'll be interested to see the results of this poll. A couple more people want to respond to that, then I'll share the results. That's great. All right, I'll show you the results. So for 41% of the people online today, it's actually not impacting their ability to exercise. They're doing the same as usual. That's fantastic.
Oh, great.
29% of people are still able to exercise, but they're not doing as much as usual. And 21% have said, I'm doing a lot less exercise than normal. And then 9% have stopped all regular exercise.
Great. Oh, look, I'm really glad to hear that people are still able to find ways to exercise. That's really positive. So I'm just going to go through a few strategies for those people that are looking in at ways that they can kind of, change their exercise routine at the moment. And I will talk about some telehealth services as well. So exercising during coronavirus. So you can still go,
Can
going
I
for
interrupt,
walks
Caitlin?
oh yeah, of course.
Sorry. I just interrupt with a couple of comments because there's a couple of really good ones. Someone said they're actually exercising way more now that they're working from home and have lost 3
Yes.
kilograms so far. So that's fantastic.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And then someone else has said because they've got more time, they're actually exercising more. So there are some wins as well as some losses too. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's been pretty consistent when I've been talking to my clients as well. I'm usually seeing people in one extreme or the other. People are doing way more than they ever have because they've got all this time and they're bored. And then some other people are finding it hard to kind of implement their usual routine at the moment. So yeah, that's great though that people are still able to exercise. It's fantastic. Yeah, so like I was saying, walking or propelling outside. I know not everyone is, keen to be outside at the moment, but if you're comfortable to do that, then definitely, getting that fresh air as well. But otherwise, exercising at home, so inside or outside of at your house. And ways you can do that is you can modify your current program into a home program, especially if you're someone who is used to exercising more independently, maybe in like a gym setting. I always say, you can use things around the house for like weights, for example. So whether it's like a tin of tomatoes or a water bottle that you can fill up according to how heavy you want. I do have one client who I think is listening to on the phone yesterday, and he said that he's been using a brick as a weight. And I thought, gosh, I don't know, if that's super safe, but yeah, as long as you're being safe with it, yeah, just finding different ways and getting a little bit creative with that as well. Otherwise, if you did have a therapist that you were seeing, reaching out to them and asking them for a home program that can be modified. Obviously, they would have a good understanding of your mobility level and your needs, so they would probably be able to create a really great program for you, I'm sure. There's a lot of virtual online classes that are kind of being released, so definitely keeping an eye out for them. And also looking at free online resources. And I have a couple that I want to kind of share with you guys today, ones that I've recommended to clients as well. And then the telehealth services, which I'll just quickly speak about. So in terms of exercising safely at home, finding a space, removing hazards. I know it sounds really obvious, but just taking a second before you start, 1 minute before you start exercising, having a look at the floor around you. Are there any electrical cords? I know that I'm looking around me and I've got, like a pair of slippers over here and a book over there. So just if you can take a minute to clear everything out before you start, that can potentially reduce the risk of falls. Ensuring that you have a cool space, so temperature cool, aircon, fan. Now, if you're doing balance exercises, trying to make sure that you have safety barriers on either side of you. So if you're doing a moving balance exercise, that might be a hallway where you can touch the sides. Or if you're doing a standing still balance exercise, it might be just having a chair or a kitchen bench on the side. Making sure there's adequate lighting in the room, wearing appropriate clothing, and finally having a water bottle and a chair close by. So they're all my recommendations. But I've got a couple of free resources that I wanted to show you. I just wanted to make a really big note that these programs will not be suitable for everyone. Please only complete exercises that are safe and appropriate for you. And if you have any concerns about the exercises you're completing, stop the exercise, and you may just want to check in with someone as to whether it's safe for you to complete that exercise or appropriate. But the first one is on the MS Trust website from the UK. They've got their own, like a build your own exercise program. And I thought it was a really good resource. They've categorized all the exercises into these like 12 categories. So you can look at either sitting exercises or balance exercises, and you can kind of pick a few exercises from the categories that, you know, are within your limitations. And they've got these like little videos with these kind of like mannequins, as you can see on the right, that kind of complete the exercise to show you what that looks like. So that's a really great way if you're kind of stuck with ideas of what kind of exercises to do. And the second link is it's an exercise right, which is associated with our Exercise and Sports Science Australia organisation. So that's a really reputable site that's got some home programs that people can do. Again, you may have to modify the programs according to your abilities, but I know they have some seated programs, some falls prevention programs. So it's worthwhile having a look at that as well. And finally, telehealth. So, you know, what is telehealth? You'll probably have heard a lot about telehealth recently, but a lot of face-to-face services are moving to telehealth at the moment to still provide that support and service to clients. So that involves a therapist consulting by either phone or video to discuss your goals, perform an assessment, and provide you with strategies on how you can better manage your symptoms. So MS has physiotherapy, occupational therapy, continence assessments, and exercise physiology telehealth services. And if you're interested in any of these or you just want more information, please call MS Connect and they can direct you to someone or provide you with that information as well. And just in terms of what an exercise physiology telehealth service looks like at MS, because this is what I've been doing at the moment. So if you're interested, we would just make initial contact with you, explain the service, tell you all about you know, funding and anything that's involved. And if you're still interested, then we'll book an appointment. That first appointment, the initial consult, if we haven't spoken to you before or if you haven't accessed our service before, it will need to be a video call just so we can gauge your physical abilities. So we'll ask lots of questions, talk about goals, weaknesses, things like that. And then we will go away and create a program, an individualized exercise program for you to complete at home with any available equipment and space that you have. We'll then call you again to deliver the exercise program, talk that out with you. We've got a few different ways which we can get that program to you. So as you can see on the left, we've got a really great app that we use at the moment as well, where you can monitor and like check off your exercises that you do. We do a 1 week follow-up to check that, you know, you're happy with that, no concerns, and it's all been running smoothly. And then really the ongoing support as required, as you want and as we think is necessary for you. So again, if you're interested in that, that sounds like something that you need or want, then definitely call MS Connect and they can put us in touch. And then I've just included some further resources. So if you want to go back and come and have a look later, things like the MS Connect, helping you find a therapist online, a couple of more links, including Dance for Health, which is a great organisation. I know they're doing online classes at the moment. And yes, so I definitely want to open up questions. And like Andrea said, if we have a lot of questions, please still send them through and I'll try and get back to you via email or however best I can, yeah, to address any questions I can.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I'm actually going
to,
I'm clicking the wrong button. I'm going to allow people, oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm trying to take, sorry, I'm taking back control of the slides just to give a little bit of a chance for people to type in some questions. There have been some great comments along the way. And just by way of giving you some space, I'll go through a couple of services and sort of like our housekeeping at the end. So MS Connect is still operating just like it normally does, the 1800 042 138 number, and you'll get through to the team there to ask any questions or connect to any of our services that we offer. Peer support is also still up and running, and that can be one-on-one phone support. It can be connecting to groups. So a lot of our face-to-face groups have temporarily converted to telegroups. And peer support can be a fabulous way of getting support around exercise ideas. Post-COVID-19, it's a great way to connect with people to do exercise together, but it's also a great way just to encourage each other, share ideas, find out what's in the local area. And telegroups have been fabulous for connecting people that are similar. So, for example, we've got a men's telegroup, we've got an over 65s telegroup, we've got a young mums telegroup. So lots of opportunities to connect, and I would strongly encourage that. It's really important, particularly at this time. A couple of additional tools that you might be interested in. Get Your Act Together was developed for the ACT, but apart from the actual agencies that it might include, there's a lot of tips and tricks within that online tool for you to help manage your symptoms. So find that on the MS website, and you can answer a few questions and get a personalised report, and it covers these symptoms that you'll see on the screen there. Employment support service is really important to connect to if you're working. We can offer a lot of support around working when you're living with MS. And same with NDIS, we can provide a lot of support to people who might be connected through the NDIS. I was having a chat through the question area with someone in regard to getting a cooling vest, because a cooling vest could be something that's really helpful to continue exercising, and you might be able to get that funded through your NDIS plan if you're under 65. And if you're over 65, My Aged Care is the program of support through the Australian government, and again, MS can help you navigate My Aged Care. So let's have a look at the questions, and I'll just that reminder too, there'll be a little survey will pop up after the webinar, and we'd love your feedback. That helps guide our programs. So now there are a lot. So Michelle, you'll have to tell me what number it is that you're after. I'm not sure what that was. Philip's asking if there's any examples of some TheraBand exercises that you could give us.
Yeah, so I think you know, there's huge. We can create whole programs based on with TheraBands. They're fantastic. So things like, especially if you have like a pole, a really great one in seating is if you were holding the band and it was wrapped around a pole and doing like a low row, really good for your posture as well. A lot of arm workouts can be done using a TheraBand. So bicep curls, pulling apart. I think that probably, yeah, looking on those resources that I provided, they might be able to provide a couple of exercises using bands as well as if you actually just, you know, I think Googling a few, like playing around with Google and typing in TheraBand exercises. I think the hard thing is that we probably have people on here with a really varied range of, you know, abilities. So trying to work out what might be relevant for everyone, it can be challenging, but definitely there's a lot you can do with a TheraBand, which is, yeah, they're really great pieces of equipment and they don't cost very much at all. So if people are looking for a cheap kind of piece of equipment that could be really versatile and add resistance to a strength training program at home, a TheraBand's a really great one, yeah.
A couple of questions about the fees to access the Exercise Physiology Telehealth and the program. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we do have flyers, which probably would be best because there were different, I guess there's different fees associated depending on what kind of, how much support someone would want ongoing. We do have, so people are interested, I really recommend they reach out to MS Connect, who can provide them the flyers or get in contact with us. But in term, there will be an NDIS rate and a fee for service rate. And the NDIS rate is, it's 2 to 2.5 hours to set up the program at a one-on-one rate. And the, I'm just thinking I might just hold off on the fee for service because I might have to just double check. I know that we've only just released these flyers this week and I don't want to give the wrong information. So I'd really recommend if anyone was interested to reach out to MS Connect, and they can get the flyer, which will have a bit more information as well as the breakup of the cost. So really with the telehealth services, especially for exercise physiology, there is this initial setup consult. And so that will involve like that initial meeting, especially for someone who we haven't worked with before, determining their level of mobility, you know, going through like contraindications, checking that they're appropriate for what exercises they're appropriate for. And then kind of helping them set up on the digital platforms for completing their program. And then ongoing, it's a lower cost because I guess it's then just a maintenance. So potentially updating their program, you know, every 4 to 6 weeks if they're trying to keep engaged, or maybe a little bit longer if they're wanting to stay on that program for longer. Or a client might want, you know, check-ins every 2 weeks if they're someone who wants a little bit more support. So yeah, sorry, that was a bit, I didn't exactly answer the question, but yeah, please get in touch with MS Connect and they can provide you flyers with a really comprehensive price breakdown for NDIS and
Caitlin, I was
non-NDIS
just
participants.
thinking, perhaps if you send that to me, I can send it to everybody that was part of the
Actually, yeah,
webinar today. Yeah.
what I might do is I'll do that, and then maybe as well I can I'll do the flyer for the general telehealth and what other telehealth services we're offering as well. Actually, that's a great idea. Thanks, Andrea. And then that way
No
everyone
problem.
has that information. Yeah, that would be great.
That's terrific. And someone's asked, what is TheraBand? And I'm going to add, where would you get it?
Oh yeah, so TheraBand is a piece of, it's like an elastic piece of material. They come in different strengths. So there's about 4 or 5 colors, and different colors equate to different resistances. So, you know, you might start off on a lighter band and progress to a harder band, and they provide resistance to an exercise. So yeah, like an elastic band. You can get them from most like sports stores. So just off the top of my head, things like Rebel would sell them. You could also try, I mean, Kmart's so good for exercise equipment at the moment. I know it's really hard actually to get your hand on exercise equipment. There's a huge rush to buy up a lot at the moment, but you can always go onto something like Kmart and they have really cheap exercise equipment. You could just say to notify me when it becomes available. Otherwise, definitely your local physiotherapist would have some, and they might be willing to sell them to you. Most of them would sell them if they have a client that they're seeing already. Sometimes they'll give them to a client with a program. But yeah, so it's spelled THERABAND, TheraBand. And if you type that into Google, you'll probably find a few different results maybe in your area as well.
Thanks, Caitlin. Monica said she bought TheraBand on eBay, and Michelle's thinking Big W has some as well.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah, super. That's great. I think we've pretty much done people's questions. So if there's anything that comes to mind after the session, as Caitlin has said and we've said, please contact MS Connect. The questions can be handed through to the right people to answer, or you can email education@ms and we'll pass it on to the exercise physiology team to answer those questions. A lot of thank yous coming in, Caitlin. It has been a terrific webinar this morning, and I'm hoping everyone's feeling motivated and supported and equipped to continue being active during this time of social isolation. So thank you so much, Caitlin, for your time. Thank you for
No,
adding
thanks,
a
Andrea.
few
And
things
thanks everyone for
to
joining
that.
me.
It's been wonderful. We'll look forward to seeing everyone on another webinar. And I guess I'd just throw in a plug. We're doing Tai Chi by webinar and Pilates by webinar, as well as a mindfulness program by webinar. So there's a heap available to people to access, and I'm going to say anytime, but actually even more during this time of reduced social contact and having to, largely be at home. There's lots of things that you can connect to through MSL. So thanks everyone for being online. Please stay online and do the little survey. It's only a couple of questions and that just helps us as well. We'll see you next time. Thanks very much.